Hello, dear students. In this session, we'll be looking into some salient features of satellite image interpretation. Satellite image remote sensing is not been a new science as of now. We are looking into several aspects, several applications in today's scenario. So today, we'll try to understand some informations regarding the image interpretation as to how to identify the features in a satellite image. Uh, just an exercise. Can you identify the features in a given satellite image? This satellite image is belongs to the Landsat, a recent one, Landsat 8 series. The resolution is about 30 meters spatial resolution. All the red color patches that you can identify as a vegetation here. Uh, for an unknown person, for a first view, it looks like a very of different fashion, very of different patch. So to identify the features very correctly for a visual interpreter, we'll go through certain processes and we identify them as visual image interpretation keys. Visual image interpretation, it's identifying certain targets, identifying the features in a given satellite imagery, but with certain rules. And the rules are clubbed in this triangle. We always follow a kind of a top-down approach here. The first primary elements are tone, and then the secondary elements are like the size, shape, texture, tertiary, pattern, shadow, and followed by the sight and association features. All in all, by using all these 7 or 8 elements, we could be very rightly able to identify almost features which are located in a satellite imagery. So we'll try to analyze all those things one by one. First, I'll try to explain you something related to the tone. Tone is also known as hue. Tone is the relative brightness or the color of the objects in an image. The tone is mainly because of the reflected energy through which is captured through a sensor from the Earth features. Now there are two images in this slide. On the right extent, you have an image where the red patches, the red color always tell you something related to the vegetation. Now, if you look this very keenly, there are several red patches here. For example, the bright red patch, and you also have the darker one. So the dark red patch always tell you something related to the cropland, whereas the white colored or where you have a dull color, it always tells you something related to a farmland or a kind of a wasteland. Now, when it comes to the image which is located on the left side, you have certain patches. This is also known as a true color composite, where green and some shades of greens are located here. Now, all in all, by using this tone or hue, we could be able to identify the features such as the cropland, farmland, or some water bodies to the extent of certain buildings. Now let's go to the second one. The second element is size. Size is kind of a scale. In the image, you can observe there is a stadium, and the size of a stadium is very relative to the other buildings which are located. You have a colony of buildings here. So by observing the size, I can able to identify the oval shape is a stadium, and other things which are relative to the stadium are some buildings, and you also can see the size variations in the buildings. So size of an object in an image, it must be considered in the context of the image scale or resolution. So based on the resolution, the size also varies. Let's go to the next one, the shape, which is very important. Now based on the shape, we can infer to most of the features, and shape is nothing but it's kind of a general form, configuration, an outline of individual objects. Now on the right corner, you have a satellite imagery where this meanderings of this linear feature will tell you something related to the river. Now I can identify very easily the feature as a river. When it comes to the picture which is located on the left side, there are some regular shapes like Y and U shape. So these buildings can be, for a very surface level, I can tell about these buildings as probably belonging to a hostel or an educational institution. And this is how the shape of an element helps in identifying the features. Now let's go to the next one, the texture, a very important one. When a feature is located individually, it may be unable to identify the feature, but the occurrence of the same feature in some frequency will helps you to identify the features. And this is how the texture helps. You can have a very coarse texture, fine texture, moderate texture, and you can also have a very fine texture. For example, see here, you have a very coarse texture, which is probably for a reserve forest, and adjacent to that you also have a very kind of a fine texture, which is most possibly a vegetated land or a planted land. Now, on the other hand, you also have a very fine texture, which is almost adjacent to that. We can also see some regular textured vegetation. So that's how I differentiate a cropland and a plantation. So you also have the similar fashions of texture in the other two pictures. The next one is pattern. The pattern is the spatial arrangement of objects. So by looking at the arrangement, you can infer a lot of things related to the satellite imagery. I'll give you one example. This is the rubber plantation. Now just look at the rubber plantation. You have a kind of a non-linear arrangement of plant canopy here, and that's how I basically differentiate a rubber plantation with that of a coconut plantation or arecanut plantation. Now this is also true in case of a colony. For example, in the satellite image down, you have a regular pattern arrangement of some houses. It's almost like a rectangular or a square shape, and that's how I can also identify these patches as belongings to the built-up area or houses. The next one is shadow. Basically, shadow in the remote sensing, what we say, the shadow also adds some inputs to the satellite imagery, and in some cases, shadow also removes some parts of information from remote sensing. So it's all in all, it gives you a kind of relative height, a kind of an aspect that is depicted in the pictures. On the left hand side, you have a kind of shivalik hills, where the aspect has given you a kind of inference related to the hills, and directly one can directly identify the features as hills. And on the other hand, you can see the shadow, and basically because of the shadow I can say something related to the feature as a pyramid, and that's how shadow is useful. The next one is sight. Most of the times sight will tell you something related to the geographical features. For example, if you consider this is a part of Western Ghats, where you can see the shallow grasslands, and the shallow forests which are located here are full of deciduous trees, and that's mainly because of the geography. And the next one is somewhere near to the estuary. In the estuarine environment, I can classify, or I can clearly identify the vegetations belonging to the mangrove species, and this is how sight is useful. Probably the last one is association. It's something like occurrence of certain features which are in relation to the certain other features. For example, the first image which you have, which is located with the playground. So obviously there is a school or a college. Next one, where you have a regular pattern of a kalyani. So I can easily say there is an existence of a temple, and the next one is a picture of a reservoir, where at the outlet of a reservoir you can pinpoint a dam. And this is how almost all 7 or 8 image interpretation keys are helpful. And I'll get back to the first image what I have shown to you. Let's go for a try. See, there is a regular pattern of same pixel here. I can call this as a road, and we also have a river here, and there is a definite set of coarse textured pixels here. This is probably the forest, and here you have a rocky outcrop, white patches. These are the fallow lands, It may be a kind of a playground. You also have certain other elements like shades in uh, the red and some other shades in the red, and these things are the croplands and planted vegetation and the natural vegetation. So students, we understood some parts of visual image interpretation with the help of certain keys, and we also apply these keys to understand the false color composite or true color composite. We'll meet again in the next class. Thank you.